What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird, and you are tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories. And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's give 'em the bird. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. My name is Haley, aka Bird, and per usual, I am so excited to have you here. On this week's episode, I get to chat with someone that I have looked up to on the Instagram for a really long time, and it was truly a pleasure and a little bit of a fangirl moment when I got to chat with her. I'm going to introduce her here in a second, but I do want to take just a brief moment, since this episode is dropping on Memorial Day, to remind you what this day is all about and to encourage you to find some moments today to honor the brave women and men who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Now, for this week's episode, I got to interview Maria Sylvester Terry, who is a registered and licensed dietitian and who has her own private practice in New Orleans. You might know her on Instagram at vitamin_re. She's amazing. A little bit more about her. Her mission is to provide nutritional guidance from a lens of self-care and to help clients go from confused to confident with food choices. Working with Maria means cultivating a positive relationship with food, learning how to fuel your body consistently, and approaching nutrition without restrictive food rules. As a former teacher, Maria strives to deliver educational and encouraging content on social media to break through the cacophonous noise of diet culture. Maria is amazing. So this episode, again, right when we hopped on Zoom, I was like, holy shit, I'm having a bit of a fangirl moment. She's like, yeah, that happens to people. I've gotten that before. And I was like, you are so cool. But being able to chat with her for an hour, I will tell you that Maria is exactly as she appears to be online. She is incredibly genuine. She is incredibly dedicated to providing a client-centered approach to her clients. And she is not tied to one framework or another, which is all about what a client-centered approach is about. And you really, really will understand that when you listen to this episode. We cover so many amazing things, and it's funny because going into the interview, I had a list of like 4 or 5 different topics that I wanted to get through. We got through one, and oh, it's so good. Maria had told me, she was like, I don't think we're going to make it through all of these. And I was like, watch me, girl, we will. And she was totally right. We focused on like one area and we dove in head first. But to give you a rough outline of what this episode looks like, Maria starts by telling us about her journey from being a teacher and then becoming a dietitian within the last 2 or so years. It's funny because I totally thought she had more of like a classic approach to becoming a dietitian. Like she was a teacher and then she realized that her relationship with food and nutrition was in the gutter, and she was like, I want to change this, I want to help people. But she really describes how it was not that kind of classic approach, and it wasn't really glorious, that she found herself becoming a dietitian after she, her words were that her mental health was in the trash or in the garbage, and how that really fueled this change to become a dietitian, partnered with seeing her dad go through issues with nutrition and food as he struggles with Crohn's disease. So it's really a cool story what brought her to be where she's at today. And it really informs this non-diet gray area approach that she takes to food and nutrition, which again, you're totally going to understand when you listen to this episode. She shares how fatphobia really dictated what health and fitness and being healthy and fit looked like for her beginning from a very young age. I mean, she talks about like at her 2-month appointment, I think it was, how she doesn't necessarily have memories, but she has memories from the remarks that people have told her over the years about how big she was as a baby and what some of her habits were. And even how that fat phobia and like weight center and weight centric family and society approach to health and fitness, how that really informed what it meant for her. And she it's funny because as she was telling about what some of her behaviors were that she didn't even knows were problematic, like they are telltale signs of a disordered relationship with food and exercise. And she said she didn't even realize that until after she got into dietetics, which I thought was really, really interesting. And to sum really up what this relationship with food and movement and healthy and fit, how it looks today compared to how it used to be, she says, now it's me with me instead of me against me. And I think that's such a beautiful approach and a beautiful way to describe the journey that she walks us through. She then goes in to talk about this gray area approach to nutrition, what it looks like for her and for her clients. And this is why I was so fucking pumped to have Maria on, because this is what she does. It's gray area. It's, moving away from the all or nothing mentality. And one of the things that we talk about is this somewhat of like frustration that she shared, she's heard from her clients, and that I've actually heard from students that I meet with, this kind of like frustration towards anti-diet culture and how, I think of it as there's moments where anti-diet culture can be super hypocritical because it's providing these rules and this framework for eating and being while it's shaming diet culture for having rules and frameworks for eating and being. So we just have a really good conversation about that. And I think the points that she hits on, it really helped the way that I view this conversation and this topic. And I think it might help some of you folks too, who maybe you're expressing or feeling that frustration yourself, or maybe you're seeing other people express it online and you want to try to understand and empathize with it a little bit better. So I think that'll be really helpful. And then we get into the bread and butter, Maria's bread and butter, which is right now, approaching goals and accountability from a non-diet lens. And she talks all about, using curiosity and flexibility rather than judgment. She references Atomic Habits, which is a book by James Clear. And I have not read this book. I have it purchased, but Tyler's actually reading it right now. And once he finishes it, I'll read it. But I'll go ahead and link it in the show notes for you. She does give a bit of a trigger warning that there is some talk about fasting in the book. But besides that, she references a couple of the strategies that James recommends in his book, which are 2-second tasks and if-then statements, which she gives really great examples of, and I think are super helpful to incorporate into your life in regards to making changes with your behaviors and setting goals. And then she also talks about this really, really cool point of being able to set a goal down and being okay with that rather than feeling like a failure. And we just talk about how in our society, not finishing something or not following through with something is totally looked at as a failure and like a personal flaw, when really it just means that I got to go back to the drawing board and I have to figure out, why didn't this goal work for me? It's not because I'm a failure or because something's wrong with me. It's just because my relationship with that goal wasn't where it needed to be. So I think that was a really, really cool point and kind of an aha moment for me during this episode that I'm really excited for you to all hear about. As you can probably tell, yes, I've had some caffeine as I'm recording this, so I'm talking really fast, but my fast talking and lots of talking is really fueled by how pumped I am to share this episode with you. Maria is amazing. I love her approach, and I really am excited to hear what some of your big takeaways are from this episode. You may want to have a pen and a paper or the notes section up on your phone as long as you're not driving in the car, because there's some really, really good points in this and takeaways that I think you might want to make some notes of or jot down. Maria does provide her contact info, which you will find in the show notes, so feel free to reach out to her. And before we dive in, I just want to remind you that if you are enjoying this podcast, if you listen to this episode and you really, really love it, feel free to head on over to Apple, iTunes, and Spotify, rate, review, follow, subscribe, do all the things that you can do, because GTB is growing, my friends, and you providing those ratings and those reviews really helps me to continue growing and to continue bringing on amazing guests like Maria. So enough of me. Enjoy this awesome episode with registered dietitian Maria Sylvester Terry. All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Give 'em the Bird. On today's episode, I am chatting with the amazing, the brilliant, the hilarious Maria Sylvester Terry. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am super freaking pumped. A little bit fangirly moment right now. Like I feel like I'm talking to an absolute celebrity.
Or not, but I'm still excited to bring that energy today. If that's what
Yes.
you like,
Yeah.
I can be a total jerk if you'd like.
No. Be yourself. Literally,
I
it's
will. I
in the
will.
10 minutes that we've been chatting, I'm like, yeah, you are who you seem like you are online. And I really like that.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Good, good.
you're awesome. So before we dive into all things nutrition and dietetics and food and movement, all that, give us a rundown of who you are. This can be personally, professionally, anything you want the people to know.
Sure. So my name is Maria. You can call me Ree. I have been a dietitian for about 2 years now. Before I was a dietitian, I was a middle school and high school English teacher, and I was pretty dedicated to becoming an assistant principal or a principal by the age of like 26.
Oh, wow.
And my life derailed very, very abruptly when I decided to leave education.
Mm,
So part of me becoming a dietitian is recognizing that life changes all the time and you don't always get it right. And you can also think you know exactly what to do and actually be totally off for
mm,
yourself, totally wrong for yourself. So I bring a lot of that flexible energy to the nutrition space, a lot of stress-free talk because I was really stressed as a teacher. So
mm,
that was an interesting time in my life, and I'm really glad to be sharing my knowledge as a dietitian. I live
mm.
in New Orleans with my husband, my two dogs. I am a private practice dietitian, so I run my own business, see my own clients here and virtually, and I also provide nutrition counseling through a gym here in New Orleans called Crew Fitness.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And if you listeners are lucky enough to be watching this on YouTube, you are seeing the dogs.
Yes,
And
yes.
I
So
love it.
here's Josie giving you a kiss.
She's so cute. I don't have many YouTube watchers, but I have a feeling that like maybe when people are hearing this, they're like, I gotta see the dogs. Like,
Yes, oh,
how,
absolutely.
how do you
Here's a
say no to
little.
that? It's so cute. Oh my gosh. Freaking adorable. I love that she's just licking you. Like,
Well, I'll full disclosure, I am coming from the gym.
oh, absolutely. Getting that sweaty
Yeah, so
salt
she's
off.
a
Yeah.
little salty girl. Hmm.
So cute. I love it. Yeah, I love how you started as a teacher and now you're a dietitian, and I want to know more about that because I think even though, GTB is all about like challenging societal expectations around like body size and movement and like what it means to be healthy and fit, I've learned like through the podcast that I also just in my life like to challenge all sorts of societal expectations. And I think one of those is like this idea that you figure out what you're going to do at age 18 and then you just stick to that path. And like you can't deviate from it. You can't pivot at all. And I think you are the prime example of like, no, you actually can and you can be really successful and it's never too late to do that. So I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit more about what that transition looked like. Like how did you decide that you wanted to be a dietitian? Like what was the driving force behind that?
Yeah, it's really strange because it's not like I had great experiences with dietitians because I did not. I wasn't like deep inside, I want to be a dietitian. It was never that way. I essentially find that like I talk about gray area a lot of nutrition. There's also a gray area in this like career change piece
Mm,
where there's either one side of the spectrum, which is you do what you were planning to do and you stick to the plan and you stay there for 40 years. The other side of it is like, quit your job, girl, become
yeah.
a boss, babe.
Just like travel, be a travel blogger.
100K, just like sneeze it out of your body. Like it's just very exuberant and strange and like
Hmm.
manifesting success. And like that comes with a lot of privilege.
Hmm.
And I was in a situation where I had really poor mental health. My mental health was in like the total trash. And it was there because of, years of perfectionist mindset. I myself lived in a very all or nothing place in my head. And what that led to is wanting to be the very best teacher I could be, which is sweet and wonderful, and was killing me.
Mm,
So I had everything you'd ever want, in terms of like what society says you want. I got married, I bought a house, I was making a lot of I was making a lot of money for being an admin and a teacher in a charter school. And I was helping kids and I was doing all the right things. What I wasn't doing is I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't taking care of my head. And I was confronted with that in like a pretty weird, like out of body experience, panic attack situation.
Wow.
That I had been having lots of struggles with panicking and lots of struggles with anxiety for probably years. But just kind of like white knuckled it. Was like, let's light a candle. It'll be fine. Or when
fucking candles.
Yeah. Like, well, I don't ever bring a lavender candle into this house because I sure as hell went through so many lavender candles. Like, it's good for you.
Oh my God.
A lot of juice. And I did the thing. I ate the acai bowls. Like I did it all and it wasn't helping. So I very abruptly left my job and I was a primary, had the primary salary in my household. And that presented a lot of challenges because we had no idea what we were going to do, but I could not continue to work. So I did not just like leave my job and become a dietitian. I left my job and was like,
fuck,
what
now?
What am I going to do?
Holy cow.
So it led me to therapy, check plus. But I had limited benefits because I obviously had left my job. So I was kind of like using whatever sessions I had. And it allowed me to see that all or nothing thing really ran my life. And that probably the next stage of my life wasn't going to be right or wrong. It just needed to be good fit. So I was a teacher, right? So I was great with kids. So I started nannying and I was formerly a yoga teacher in college. And I realized, well, I'm a little scrappy in that way. Like, well, what do I have to like throw together here? I would be great on Chopped, like 100%.
Great on Chopped.
I threw together this like summer of me nannying for 4 boys, which was intense. And then also getting back into teaching yoga. I recertified and probably by January, I was pretty much determined like, all right, I think this dietetics thing is something I want to do because I realized how wrong I had it about nutrition. I was so stressed all the time that I was like relying on nutrition to be this like bullet that fixed everything, the silver bullet solution. And I actually was putting so much pressure on myself to perfect it with fitness and nutrition, all that stuff. And it really wasn't helping me at all. So I kind of reflected on some experiences that really crafted my headspace. One is that my dad has been sick pretty much my whole life with Crohn's disease and has never once seen a dietitian. So he, I was raised watching him be sick, experience being sick, feel terrible, and eat really strangely. Like he ate white bread in the 90s. That was a sin. There are a lot of things I watched my dad do. And I was like, why can't my dad feel better? So I kind of thought like, maybe I want to go into some sort of nutrition counseling for GI or gut health. And then I thought about going into psych. I looked at school counseling positions. I knew I wanted to be in some sort of counseling, guiding role that wasn't like interfacing with people every single day, like children, grading, parents, like that kind of monotony. So I decided I'm going to just not do anything right or wrong. I'm going to take a couple courses at the local community college and see what I like. Wow. I really loved nutrition. And then all memories started flooding back of all my really awful dietetic experiences as a kid, because I was, high on the growth chart and just like, I was crucified for it by my pediatrician. And I realized, well, dietitians don't have to be that way. And I know that. And I can do something different. So it kind of became this like, how could I help kids in a different way? Maybe I could present a different experience for them from another role in their life. My dietitians made me hate my life. And my pediatrician is a monster. She didn't mean to be a monster, but in my memory, in my like paradigm of what pediatrician is, not a good look. And I thought, you know what? Well, I still want to work with people, parents, kids, still want to do all of that. And I'm going to help them in a way that feels like a good fit for me and my mental health, and a way that really supports other people's mental health without them even realizing it. So taking the stress out of nutrition is like the number one thing that I can do for someone. And so it truly was not like I had this itch inside of me to become an RD. Like I was like, shit, I got to go to school for this. Like, which meant I dabbled into that other end of the spectrum, right? Of like, well, what if I just became a coach? What if I just became a fempreneur and I just like made an Instagram and did it? And I just like went to an integrative, holistic, et cetera, functional medicine, nutrition course thing. And I realized, well, you didn't get this far in life to like to take a weekend course and then claim all these things you can't do. I like to be authentic to not necessarily honoring like classical education. I mean, that's problematic in and of itself, but I wanted to do right by people. I had not been done well by people in a lot of ways. So that's a very long answer to your very small question, but I think it's important to establish that like, it wasn't like this kind of classic coming of RD tale of like, I struggled with food. Like, I didn't even realize I struggled with food until I was at rock bottom and pivoting in a career. Like, I really did not realize how bad it was. And, you know, kind of looking back on what mattered to me and how to live a life that felt really authentic to me, kind of meant doing things differently.
Yeah, I love that story, and I had no idea that that was what it looked like. Like in my head, you know, it was just I was a teacher, and then I decided, you know, like we don't see the struggle a lot of times. And it's also interesting. My dad also had Crohn's disease, so I can totally relate to that, like wanting to help and seeing all that and everything. I'm curious because you mentioned that, you know, I didn't even realize that I was struggling until I hit rock bottom. One thing that I talk about a lot on this podcast is like how our definition of what it means to be healthy and fit has like changed over the years. And I'm curious if you can give us kind of an overview of what that has looked like for you, like, you know, when you were younger, what did healthy and fit look like? And then to where you are now, how has it changed and what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think this is like trigger warning diet talk, like all over it. I think growing up, my first like story of my weight was when I was 2 months old. Apparently I doubled my body weight, so a whopping 14 pounds. She shook the scales. Like, what? Like, I was told you were the hungriest baby. You loved nursing. Like, who? Like, yeah.
What baby doesn't?
Genetically programmed to love nursing. Like, that's how it works.
Biology.
I had heard a lot growing up that like my pediatrician, the OG, the only one I had for 18 years, was very much like, oh, give her water when she's thirsty. Like, which you like don't do, y'all. You don't do that. So, you know, 6 months might be water time, might even be a year. I don't remember that part of life stage nutrition.
Yeah.
But it's not when you're just because you're too fat as a baby. So fat phobia really dictated a lot of what I thought health looked like. I grew up in an environment where like I love my mother, and she struggled a lot with her experience with nutrition because she was frequently following Weight Watchers off and on and off and on. I grew up with, you know, copies of the Zone diet, whatever diet Oprah Winfrey was suggesting, the military diet, the Vogue diet, the diet with the hot dogs and the cottage cheese. Everyone in my family was dieting, except my dad, right? Because my dad couldn't, but his relationship with food was also really turbulent. Everyone in my family grew up a little chubby, like, you know, maybe like actually carrying a lot of weight that concerned a pediatrician to say something, e.g. me. But for a lot of us, it was always weight centered. So then when I left high school, I literally had no idea what it looked like. I just always have seen myself as the 5-year-old who went to the dietitian, who was told, you're going to weigh X number of pounds in 5 years if you don't start eating less. Here's an interesting story. My pediatrician said, do you eat as much as your dad? And I said, no. And she said, do you eat more or less than your dad? And I said, more. She did not know my dad had Crohn's disease.
Wow.
My dad could not eat a lot of food at once, or he would immediately be sick. So she said, well, you know, when you're up getting seconds and your dad's sitting down, you should think twice.
Oh my gosh.
You go out for a run instead of walking to the kitchen, go outside and play. And so I really, in my mind, shaped this idea of I will be healthy, I will be strong, I will be all of these things I'm supposed to be if I am thin. So because I had no concept of what I really looked like, I just assumed you are this little fat kid from, you know, 5 years old. I went to high school really hard on myself. Nothing like, you know, cataclysmically bad, but just really hard on myself. College, got into fitness. Never really was into fitness. I like going to the gym, so I didn't have to go to gym class in high school.
Yeah.
But God, definitely was like, get me out of gym class. I was always big last, like could not do any of the presidential fitness tests, nothing. Like very turbulent relationship there as well. So by the time I got to college, I started running and teaching yoga and doing those things. I was like socially smoking, and I like stopped smoking. I started feeling like maybe I'll be vegetarian. I started to dabble, and then the compliments started rolling.
Yep.
Oh my God, you look so good. What do you do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm stressed as hell and I run 20 miles a week.
Oh, shit.
And then it became 40 miles.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, well, now I do half marathons. I went to school on a mountain, so I hiked a lot. And I'll never forget people being like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't really until I was beyond this point. And I look back and I was like, oh, you didn't eat. Like you did not function. I was sick all the time. I had horrible memories in college of being on antibiotics all the time.
Wow.
I was like gurneyed out of a 200, 300-year-old building. Went to a very old school because I couldn't breathe, because I had bronchitis. My body really could not fight it. I like passed out, could not get oxygen. And nobody was like, hey, talk to a dietitian about eating regularly because you seem to be running yourself ragged. So that became the narrative, is that when I was stressed, I ate perfectly and I exercised extra because that's what Dr. Oz said to do. That's what Oprah said to do. I'm like popping vitamins and then like staying up for 40 hours in a row. So that became the routine for me, probably all the way through my first year of teaching, which is a really rough time. Shout out to any first year teachers who are listening to this, or anyone who wants to be a teacher. That first year is really hard. And I relied on running as mental health. And it was really helpful, but then I started getting injured. And then when you get injured, you think you can't eat as much, even though you should be eating more. And then it just became lots of weird health issues, a lot, like itchy all the time.
Oh, wow.
I thought I was allergic to sugar, of course, because that was the narrative at the time. You know, the thing that your body runs on.
Yeah. Just that little important thing.
So all that wrapped up, take that into 6 years of teaching. Wow. And then I don't have anything. I don't have my mental health. I don't have my physical health. My hair's falling out. I'm miserable. I have horrible hormonal acne, very painful. Felt winded all the time. Could not like eat a full dinner and not feel sick to my stomach because I was so stressed. So I'd say health looked very much like, if you aren't white knuckling your nutrition and fitness, you're not doing it well enough. And then everything had to change, which is, am I sleeping enough? Do I see a therapist? Do I go on walks during the day? Like, do I at night even? Like, do I take time to be outside? Do I go 20 minutes and work and then take a 5-minute break? Like, I was teaching my kids Pomodoro method, but I was crazy, and I was working 20 to, felt like I was working 20 hours a day. So health looks very different now. Health looks like, do you prep food for yourself because you need it there because you have a podcast interview at 1 and you're coming from the gym and you're going to need food in between. Like, it's become very much me with me rather than me against me. That is the summation of everything I just said in 4 seconds.
Me with me instead of me against me.
Yeah, because health was something I had to pursue. I had to earn it. I had to prove it right to my dietitian, to my pediatrician, my blood work, right? I had to like prove that I was working on my thyroid antibodies. Spoiler alert, I still have thyroid antibodies and everything else is normal. But like, here I was as a kid thinking, like, if I just drank more water and didn't have a sip of my mom's Diet Coke, like I would be better. Like, these absurd thoughts. But trauma's a trick thing.
Yeah. So you really, what I love is that you really walk us through how you came about to find this like gray area when it comes to your work.
Yes.
So I'm curious if I feel like you've given a really great overview of what that even looks like. Like, I can, even if I'm somebody who doesn't know what the gray area approach to like food and nutrition and everything sounds like, I feel like from your story I can gather that. But I'm curious, like, when it shows up as your work with clients, like, what does your approach look like? What does gray area nutrition and like dietetics, what does that even mean? What does it look like?
Yeah. So I'll say what it isn't first, which some people think that it's like fence sitting. I've run into some folks that are like, oh, well, you're just a fence sitter. You just want to enjoy all of the tools of dietetics and make all of the outcomes happen for your clients, e.g. use intuitive eating for weight loss. That's gray area. That's called co-opting.
Yes.
So I want to name, like, it's not like eating broccoli with a cupcake or something. Like, it's not like this like perfect marriage, because the thing is that it's not perfect. So mainly when I work with clients, we talk a lot about not feeling right or wrong according to society, and really identifying what works for you in this moment. And then acknowledging that what works for you now might not work for you later.
Yes.
Okay. So that's like a huge premise. It looks like one of two things lately that I'm seeing. One is the recovering dieter, someone who's like really done in a restrictive mindset, but they feel like they have to work out every single day, and they feel like they have to prep every single meal, and they can only eat croissants on the weekend, and that's their weekend pleasure. And so we break the little rules. That's what it means to step into the gray area a little bit. Say, okay, it's not all or nothing. Where are you in the middle? Like, can we try one thing this week that is new or different? Can you go buy the cereal and see what happens? I had a client I started working with a year ago, and she's successfully no longer binging. And she got there pretty quickly because she stepped into that gray area of like, I know I'm going to eat everything if it's in my house right now. I'm only going to buy one thing at a time to challenge that, right? So it's not like balls to the wall, like you're going to do this now. The flip side is I also have many clients who are very tired of the anti-diet space on Instagram, because they have now lost all concept of nuance. They have lost context of what felt good to them. I often ask these clients, any client really, well, what worked for you on the old diets? No one likes that question, but you're like, oh, well, when I was on Weight Watchers, I realized I liked yogurt. Or when I was doing X paleo, I realized how much I liked, sweet potatoes, if they're even allowed, or like whatever it was. And we're going to use all the things we know about you, and we're also going to use the concepts of intuitive eating, if those apply to you, if those even are relevant to you, and we're going to figure out what is the structure you need. So part of the gray area is also identifying structure. It's not always just breaking rules. It's also building up structures so that I can eat at 11, 12, or 1. Or what if you work a night shift and all this like eat when you want, babe kind of concepts don't apply? Well, this is how we can apply it. We can say this is a good time for you to eat. This is what we can be having. I had someone who recently was like, I feel like, I'm supposed to be enjoying all the foods. I'm supposed to be choosing a cupcake when there's salad, because diet culture says eat the salad. It's like, well, what do you say?
Yes.
So there's also a lot of that. So I would say for me, depending on the client, it looks different, but ultimately it is identifying what are your all or nothing perfection rules, how to do it perfectly, even if it is intuitive eating, and we break that up. And then we also rebuild a structure that feels like, eating a snack every 3 hours is an easier approach for me than meals, because of my lifestyle, my finances, my schedule, whatever it is. And I feel really good. I feel really energized. Okay, great. We don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to tell anybody what you're doing.
Yes.
Like, I feel like there's also that, like, I got to show it.
Yes.
You don't have to show it. You just have to show up for yourself, period.
Yeah. I like that. You really take the whole person into account, right? Like, because I think a lot of times, and I'm curious if you would maybe be able to share more about the people feeling like kind of fed up about like how anti-diet is showing up on Instagram, because I've been meeting with people who are saying the exact same thing, and just how they feel like but what if I actually do want the salad? Or what if I actually do want a meal prep, because it saves me time and it saves me money, and then I can actually eat regularly? Or what if I actually do want to go for a run, right? Because diet culture tells us, or kind of anti-diet culture, there's that like running is bad, like you only run if you want to lose weight, right? So I'm curious if you can talk more about that, like what your thoughts are on kind of that frustration potentially, and yeah, just kind of what comes to mind when you think about that.
Yeah. So what comes to mind is probably surprising maybe to some listeners, because they're like, this is a nutrition podcast or concept today. The thing is that we can probably all identify diet culture is really harmful. And some of us are still working through identifying where the origins of diet culture are. And inherently within that is anti-fatness, white supremacy, anti-blackness.
Yes.
And so let's start there. And symptoms of a white supremacist culture, it would include perfectionism. either or thinking. I highly recommend reading Sabrina Strings to identify even any of the research that she's done to just identify even just like what it means to utilize BMI as a health metric. Like, what is that? What is all this that's happening here? If we just put a pin in that for a moment. Okay, so then we have this situation where people are struggling with anti-diet culture and oh my God, it's like all these new rules, all these new things. Well, dietetics is also exceptionally white and female.
Yes.
And a lot of people come into dietetics, practice from a weight central or like a weight focus, weight management type of concept, and maybe they shift, they learn, they're like, this is not what I want to do. This is more like older dietitians. Newer dietitians are coming in more like weight neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Have they done the work of untying their either or thinking, of needing of the right to comfort, of perfectionism, myself included?
Mm-hmm.
Are you grappling with that? Are we making the steps we need to make in order to create an environment where our headspace can operate outside of that thinking? It never really can, but are we trying? Right? So then we have the client. And the client is also struggling with either or thinking. It's also struggling with doing it right, with being perfect, because we have this ideal body size, this ideal look, this ideal image that we're never going to attain. We're going to dump all of our money into trying to attain. We got a lot of things happening, right? So it's a no-brainer to me that you present someone with a framework, you present someone with the opportunity to make graphics, to create videos, and it kind of comes out like a white lady's telling you what to eat. Or telling you what not to eat, including cauliflower. Don't eat cauliflower. Cauliflower is the devil. Give cauliflower a break. It's working overtime as pizza crust and mashed potatoes. It's still just cauliflower.
I recently ate cauliflower rice for the first time and I actually really like it.
This is a safe space. This is a brave space. Share that here. Like we can acknowledge that there is harm in diet culture while also acknowledging that we often apply the same all or nothing thinking, the same black and white thinking, the same perfectionism to anti-diet.
Yes.
We've just now made it more fun, right? Now we can just eat more food over here, where it still sometimes carries this weight and pressure of needing to get it right. And needing for it to, I hate this part, needing for it to feel good. Nutrition doesn't always feel good, especially it doesn't feel good if you don't have freaking food access. Like, these are the things that get missed when diet culture / anti-diet culture becomes a sort of improve your life. It becomes healthism, right? Like,
yes,
you owe this to yourself. Invest in my program. It's $4.99 a month. No shade at anybody who's, quote, charging their worth, but like, what are we charging for exactly? The framework to do it right? Are we promising results that might not be sustainable? That sounds like diet culture to me a little too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, none of these opinions are popular. And I realize that. I'm kicking my shoes off. I'm really getting into myself.
It's so funny. I literally just took my shoes off. I literally just did under my desk. Yeah.
Grounded into the floor.
Yeah.
Really buckle up. But that's sort of why I think that happens. And whether or not you're buying into that full concept, that is not original by any means, right? This is my learnings. I think we can all agree that it is hard to quit dieting and then just completely erode our brain and our framework of how it used to think. So at the very minimum, can we acknowledge that all or nothing thinking is really pervasive and we will apply it to a framework that's not meant to have it. Like, intuitive eating is not meant to have it. There's an entire little section on what happens when you keep pouring bowl after cereal after bowl after cereal just because it's there, just because you're reading the newspaper. And kind of talks about, do you really need to eat it all? Which is like, what? Doesn't intuitive eating tell me to just eat all and how much that I want? No, it's actually quite nuanced if you want to apply nuance to it. Nuance doesn't sell and it doesn't go viral. So that's on capitalism.
Yes. Oh, you are so good. You hit on so many important points. And I feel like you say exactly how I've been feeling. Because when I first started GTB, I was very, let's see. Without knowing it, I was focusing like on it. I was taking a gray area approach and like in a non-diet way. And then I feel like I got really sucked into like the anti-diet and I started noticing myself being so hypocritical. I was like being so hypocritical saying they shouldn't be doing that, but then don't you shoulds. And it's like I was shaming people for having a black and white mentality. Meanwhile, I was using absolutes, like it was so I think I love the way that you talk about it. And I know I've said it like 12 million times, but I just love the approach that you take. And again, it's nuance. Like you said, it's it's these big claims in these you will change your life if you just allow yourself to eat the cupcake. Like that's what sells. Just like if you just don't eat the cupcake, you will change your life. And
Wait, that's
isn't
the
it?
realest thing ever. And
Yeah.
it's like, what is it doing? It's hitting on pain points. It's hitting on
Mm-hmm.
people's misery.
Yes.
Listen, it's a hard world out there. We're never
Mm-hmm.
gonna just make it all better because we wrestled with a cupcake or two.
Right.
We're just not.
I freaking wish, but that's not like
Because I could totally cupcake myself to happiness.
yeah.
And still have to navigate the rest of the world. So you're right. A lot of it's not only nuance and looking at the whole person, but it's looking at coping skills. I'm like, do you go to therapy? Can I recommend someone for you? Like, what's your insurance? Like, it's like doing the step work with a client that it's more in line with probably what you do in wellness coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Really just like, it's not necessarily just like eat this, not that. It's more of like, what do you need to be able to eat more regularly?
Yes.
Okay, great. If this is out of my scope, I'm going to show you where to go. But if this is something I can point you in the right direction for, like, let's go for it.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many, because I work with college students, there's so many college students where the biggest barrier to them, because I focus a lot, obviously I'm not a dietitian, I'm an intuitive eating counselor, but I do mostly like fitness coaching. And a lot of what prevents them from even getting active and going to the gym that the university, like they're paying for it to go to, is finances, and it's like working through all of that. And again, I think that on both sides of the kind of the spectrum or both sides of the pendulum or whatever, those things get missed. So I think it's important that you hit on them. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more, because one thing that you said that you are really loving lately is this idea of like goals and accountability from a non-diet lens. Tell us more, because as a health and wellness coach, like goals are the shit to me. Like I freaking love them. Like that's what we do. We set goals. And again, it's nuanced, but I think it's like finding a way to approach those goals from a place of like compassion and non-judgment, and also recognizing that we need support around us to help us reach those. So I just want you to unpack your brain when it comes to this.
Yeah. Fun fact is when I come home from a vacation, I sometimes let my suitcase sit for 4 days.
You
And
do
then
not. I am an instant unpacker.
I do my laundry before. This is a weird thing I learned from nannying, but I always do the laundry before I pack it to come home. There's always clean laundry.
My sister does that, and I think that's brilliant.
If you have the access to do it, it's nice.
Yes.
But I will try to unpack in a very neat way. So I think you hit on one piece, which is you said compassion over judgment, which I tell clients curiosity over judgment. So
Ooh,
so I like offering the idea of goals, even though it sounds like the G word for a lot of people, and accountability is the A word for a lot of people.
mm-hmm.
But like, I don't need you to hold me accountable. But then when it comes to like, hey, did you eat today? Like that's sometimes a good starting point to say, well, why not? What happened? Let's talk through that. Like, let's ask all the questions, because you're not a bad person. You didn't screw up today, but what happened? And then you kind of really digging through the curious part of your brain rather than the judgmental part. For example, a goal might be, I want to lose 10 pounds, right? Okay, well, that probably is rooted in a lot of judgment rather than like, I'm curious, what would it be like? What would my energy levels feel like if I lost 10 pounds? Like, no one is asking that question, because typically when we have a goal of weight loss, it's like, because I want to look better. I want to feel better. I want to fit in my clothes. I'm having a hard time. I have an event coming up. Someone said something to me. It's usually a gut judgment. So I ask people to say, well, if that was your goal, or maybe you're struggling with the idea of goals at all because of diet culture, and you're like, where do I even begin? Get curious with yourself. Ask yourself, what would make my life a little bit easier? How could I be nicer to myself? How could I energize myself, and really look at like enhancement? Not that it needs to be this like biohack, because I can't do that either. Like, it's not like, how do I like eliminate brain fog? Listen, brain fog's gonna happen because it's 2022 and like I don't even know what day it is.
No.
Like, that's just kind of the new everything to us, is like, I don't know. I'm just gonna wait for the latest meme to come out and tell me how I feel.
Yeah.
We're very out of touch with where we are. So curious thoughts versus judgmental thoughts to start. And then let's say, okay, that weight loss goal is now shifted. It's like, whoa, I actually don't drink enough water and I haven't eaten a vegetable in 4 days and like my poop's really off. Like, I'm not feeling that. That feels really uncomfortable. I'm gonna set a goal to drink more water and try to eat one vegetable a day, right? We like a SMART goal. So maybe it's like one vegetable, one day a week, one vegetable 3 days a week. Prep one meal this week, like something with a time on it. So you could feel like it's attainable. Because sometimes big, hairy goals, you're just like, there's no way. So be flexible. So if not one day, or if not 2 days, then one day. If your goal is to like get back into movement that feels good, you're not going to, use your Whoop as a judgment. You're not going to use the Apple Watch readout as a judgment. You're going to ask yourself, hey, how did it feel? Would I want to go back? And like really investigate it, and be okay if you don't want to go back to like whatever gym class you decide to try, or being flexible with a recipe. What happens when you meal prep that one dish for the week and that's your goal, but the recipe sucks? You didn't know, but like somebody told you it was good and you're like, this is great. Being flexible, because the flexibility offers the option for you to reflect on it. If you're so rigid with your goals, you automatically just feel like, oh, I shit the bed. I messed it up. I'll have to start over next week. Doesn't that sound familiar? So we don't want to start getting into this, diet laden space again, where it's like, oh, I'll just try again next week, because that fuels all or nothing thinking. Well, what are you going to do on Saturday, Sunday? Probably go to town on foods that might not make you feel better, even though your original goal is to just feel more energized. That's interesting how that happens, right? So flexibility is huge. I teach a lot of my clients one of two things, which is 2-second tasks and if-then statements, which are talked about a lot in Atomic Habits, which is a James Clear book. Some like trigger warning on that, like he does like really talk about fasting a lot, but in terms of just like trying to build stronger habits, he talks a lot about just focusing on 1% better, and focusing on the little tiny pieces of it. For example, if a client's having a really hard time getting out of bed in the morning, it's the only time they can go to the gym and they really want to go, but they don't want to be hard on themselves, we break it down into a 2-second task, which might look like taking the covers off of your body, putting your feet onto the floor. 2-second task might be laying your clothes out on your bed. Like, boop, just this is the putting them. just
the putting them, yeah.
Just there. Tying your shoelace, like just something. Laying your shoes out in front of the door. What is the 2-second task that gets you a little bit closer? Knowing that you might not actually get to the gym, but you got 2 seconds closer than you did before. The second is if-then statements, which sounds like, if I don't go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, then I'll go for a walk 2 days this week. Just like if I'm inviting movement back into my life, setting a goal, and then also setting a backup plan. And then I also think being okay, this is strange, being okay to leave them. Maybe this isn't the goal for you. For example, I do have a Whoop. I love my Whoop. I don't, buy into so much of it, but I really love the idea of being in a research study. And the research study was on runners, and they gave some runners one plan and some runners another plan. And I was on this like really cool run based on your recovery score. It was awesome. I did become a better runner, but I did not finish it. And I really was like hyped up. I was like, yes, I'm going to finally get back into it. But I'm not the runner I used to be. And I realized this is not a goal for me anymore. This is not interesting to me. It's 99 degrees here and people in Michigan are like having the time of their life running in October. I am not. And I had to kind of lay it down. And I didn't feel bad about telling people that. Like, oh, how's your running thing going? I quit. It wasn't a good fit for me. So I think when you take away that, you take away the room for failure, because you're like, whatever, it'll be what it is. It doesn't hurt. It no longer hurts to fail, because it's not a failure anymore. It's like, oh, it just didn't work. There's a little even more nuance in there, which is it's still going to be hard. Like,
Yes.
don't quit when it's hard, but do acknowledge if it's not a good fit for you anymore.
Yes. I really like that point. I talk a lot about like what you had mentioned, like the kind of the starting small, like really small, the 2 second
Mhm.
goals. And then also you said like the if then statements. I always say like having a backup plan, right? Like strategizing, identifying potential barriers and strategizing to overcome them. But the being able to let go of a goal. I that is huge. And I think that it's funny because as you were mentioning that, I was reflecting on how many times in my past life or in my life so far I have purchased a fitness program and I didn't stick with it. And looking back, it was because I wasn't eating enough food and I was like doing way too much, right? But I remember how badly I would beat myself up for it and how I would be it's my fault. And that I literally still have this like limiting belief inside of me that says I can't finish shit. Um
Ooh.
and so I love that idea of incorporating this like in kind of helping a client or a person to feel empowered to say no and to set something down. Like I love what you just said about that. That is so huge.
Yeah, and maybe no is like not now or
Mhm.
maybe later, right? No doesn't have to be a forever door shut thing.
Mhm.
I'm recently interested in running again, but like
Mm.
maybe it's not going to be with a program and the
Mhm.
calendar invites to myself to remind myself to do it. Like maybe it's going to be different. And
Mm.
that it is a beautiful but very challenging thing to rest, your ideas on because you are so used to just saying like I'm going to do it and then because I did it I'm great.
Mm.
You're great
Mhm.
either way. You are starting amazing. And it would be really cool to hit this milestone in your life. So like what does it entail? What does it require? And I love that you named that sometimes finishing these programs didn't happen because you weren't energized, you didn't have enough food. And so also that comes from curiosity, right? Of looking back and saying, why didn't it
Yes.
work? Why isn't this a fit for me? And saying, oh, it requires me to eat more food. And I am very scared of that. I should probably instead invest my money in seeing a dietitian. Or
Mm.
I should instead invest my time in unpacking that in therapy,
Mm.
right? Like
Yes.
we don't have those conversations with ourselves or even like just calling a friend, talking it out, calling someone like you, right?
Mhm.
You're just going to think that you suck. You
Yes.
don't suck. Sometimes the goal sucks.
That is so true. Wow. I'm having a mind blown moment. Just like I just think that is like if we don't get curious about why a goal didn't work, which again, I do this with work with clients, but it's the way that you frame it. If we don't get curious and then kind of investigate why it didn't work, we just have this idea that we failed, we're a failure, we can't do the thing, and this thing is not for us, or like I'm not for this thing, when really it's like, no, maybe in a few weeks I'll try that again, but I need to get like these ducks in a row before I do it because that'll help set me up for success better. Like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, this is coming from someone who did like the 1,000 squat challenge in heels in her classroom every morning.
What?
Like, one of those like Pinterest,
Oh, yes.
this is how you get to 1,000 squats. Josie's
Hmm.
like, it was about time, mom. Like, I think about all the times I've like trashed myself in front of Josie, and she did not. She did
Oh, look at her. She's
not.
like, I'm just gonna give you kisses,
Butter,
mommy. I just
butter.
love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I've done it all, y'all. I've done every
Mhm.
program. I drank Epsom salt water. I have no problem telling you all the ridiculous things I did in pursuit of doing it well,
Mhm.
saying that I did it. Like, how many freaking yoga studios do a yoga attendance challenge? Like,
Mm.
one, we know why they're doing it. They want to encourage you, and also it gets more people in the door.
They want money.
Yeah. And like
Mm.
30 days. Well, if I go to yoga for 30 days, do you really think I'm going to want to go to yoga on the 31st?
No. Hell no. I'm gonna be
No.
so burned out on that yoga.
Right. Especially if it's hot yoga, you're literally burnt. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so many things that I would do. Think,
Mm.
God, why can't you do that?
Mm.
Why can't you just do it? All these other people are doing it. Well, what do they have to tell themselves to get out the door?
Mhm. And how is their life different and allows them to do that?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
ours doesn't, right? Like, again, it's
Yeah,
like you mentioned, access to things, or if I have to work 3 jobs in order to pay for my rent, then I'm probably not going to be able to make it to the yoga studio every single day. Like,
yeah, yeah.
there are so many things that we don't, and again, very diet culture, that we don't take into consideration when it comes to being able to achieve our goals and do those things.
Completely.
Hmm. You are just the queen. You
Oh
are
goodness, say nothing. That's not. Mm-mm. Thank you
you.
though. I appreciate it.
I just think that, and it's so funny because as I was driving back home, I ran some errands earlier, and I was like, okay, I got to get back, for this interview, and I was just kind of thinking about it over my head. I think that the teaching, I can just see how it informs your work and how it makes you a better, I can imagine it makes you a better, like, coach or dietitian or, all the things.
I feel like it does. And my mom had always said, Rhea, you're always going to use that teaching degree. Don't discount that. Tell people you were a teacher. And for the longest time, I didn't.
Mm,
I was like, oh no, like that's like, no one's ever going to make the connection. No one's ever going to think that that's a good thing. And then people started to be like, whoa, you're really good at presenting. You really helped me understand that. Like people loved being in a study group when I would like
yes.
get on the whiteboard and like go wild. Like, and I thought, huh. And now with clients, it's fun because they're like, well, can you help me understand why I need carbs and protein after workout? Because I'm really having a hard time with that. And I feel like I was told not to do that. And it's like, oh my God, let me tell you this story about what your muscles do. And so that English teacher in me is so vibrant and so needed to
Mm,
do the work that I do in the capacity that I want to do it.
mm-hmm.
There are other dietitians that don't need that. It's not required, but I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you saying that because it has taken me a while to not be ashamed of how drastically different this career change is and to actually
Mm-hmm.
really embrace it as unique.
Yeah. I can also see sometimes that like I think about the one, I don't even remember what it was in regards to, but you had it on like the back of an envelope and you were showing, do you know
Yeah,
which one I'm talking about? You have it on one of your,
I did one on protein and I did one on like urges to lose weight. And I did
yes,
on intermittent fasting. Hmm.
yes, like your activities and things that you think of and just the way that you approach certain topics. Yeah, you rock. Um, People need to know where to find you. Tell
Come
us.
to New Orleans.
Pl-
Come to this sweaty swamp and experience swamp ass for yourself. No, don't do that unless you're very hydrated. I would say email is great, right? If you have like a direct question, my DMs are a little bit sloppy. Um, so hello at mariaterrynutrition.com. You can find me on Instagram if you love the way that I'm talking about nutrition. I talk about it a lot on that
Mhm.
platform. So vitamin_RI. And those are probably the two best places to find me,
Mhm.
I think.
You
Yeah.
mentioned that you have like, is it like a newsletter or something?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my newsletter is called Sunday Brunch. Thanks for reminding me. And it is for recovered bagel scoopers, is what it's called. And it's,
What?
people who used to scoop the bread out of the bagel.
Wow, I never got to that.
Reformed bagel scoopers is what it
I
says.
never got to that point.
It's rough. It's rough out there. I grew up in the Northeast, which is bagel capital, so diet culture had a different brand.
Mm.
Um, so, with that being said, please sign up for Sunday Brunch. It is a really targeted newsletter. It's more long form, so I do write in it. I usually share a fun recipe or a fun thought that I'm having. I have a little blurb called the egg white omelet, which is a little essay on uncomfortable things, like
Mm.
little discomfort things that happen when we unlearn diet culture. And then I'm also starting a little column that's like a little help column. So you can write me a letter and I will answer it in the newsletter.
Oh,
I'm really excited about that. I just started that.
oh my gosh. I need to sign up for Sunday brunch.
Yes, please. And like I think the graphics are great. It's very brunchy. Oh, and there's also I make a playlist every week. So I feel like the best way to start the week is with a brand new fresh playlist to like get your Monday going. I kid you not, I listen to my own playlist and I jam out in here every Monday morning and it carries me through the whole week. It works for a walk, it works for a lift. It's like very vibrant and fun. So that is updated. Even if you don't want to do the newsletter, just search Sunday Brunch on Spotify.
What?
Yeah.
Maria, you are so fucking cool.
Thanks.
Holy shit.
like, what do I love to do? I love to write. I love to listen to music. I love this girl's little cutesy bottom teeth that you just got to see.
She's so darling.
So I try to bring things I love to you, and if it's not a fit, it's okay. But if it is, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. You are, I just love I love everything you say. I love the way you say it. I love your facial expressions. I love how genuine you are. I love your dogs.
I love you too, and I love you too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for making space for all three of us today.
Oh, absolutely. Luckily, my dogs would have been here, but Tyler took them up to the pond. It's a community pond. We don't have a pond. We don't have a pond. We just live down from the city park.
Pond. Yeah.
A pond.
PAWND. Pond.
Tyler took the children up to the pond. Oh gosh. So yeah, dogs are always welcome, and I just love that you show up exactly as you are, and I really do think that you're brilliant. I love the way that you talk about all these things, and just that you take the whole person into account, and you don't seem so tied to one way or another way that it's going to take away from the way that's going to work for a client. And so thank you.
Oh my gosh, absolutely not. It's very much informed by the client. I am very proud to offer client-centered coaching, and that feels so in alignment with me. I'm not attached to any framework, not attached to anything at all. So I find that's where things get really sticky, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in an effort to better serve people, I do sometimes have to navigate my own gray areas a lot and feel like, well, what is the best opportunity right this moment to help this person? And I'm so glad that it resonates with you.
It does. It really does. I feel like I'm going to have you back on, because I have 4 other bullet points of things of other topics. And I was like, oh yeah, let's get through this shit. But you're right. We can't get through all of it. So you're going to have to come back.
The context is I did send Haley an email, and I was like, I don't think we're going to get through it all.
Yeah. I was like, watch me. You were right.
Yeah, it's okay. I've done this before. I know that these answers take time.
You are so good. And I'm glad that you didn't, I'm glad that you didn't rush through them, because everything you said had absolute purpose, and I can't wait to re-listen to this. I'm so excited. I love re-listening to episodes when I edit them, and I just feel like I'm going to get a lot from this one when I re-listen to it. So thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of GTB. If you're enjoying this podcast, feel free to head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate, review, and subscribe. You can also share this podcast on Instagram and tag me at Give 'em the Bird Podcast. I will see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.